starting in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, this is Veronica.
And I'm Studio Steve.
We are the Pod Sound School.
And this is PodBitz. PodBitz is a quick and easy way to digest the latest news and events in podcasting.
Learn about actionable tips to podcast like a beast.
Listen to our podcast recommendations.
And be in the know with what is up in the PSS community.
And we do it all live.
While the clock is ticking.
Unedited.
And raw.
So get those ears ready.
Crank those speakers up.
And let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to another PodBitz episode. I'm Studio Steve.
And I'm Veronica.
And we're very excited to be back with another PodBitz this week.
Yes, we are. So remember the PodBitz, it's a bonus episode we bring to you each week with the latest in our Pod Sound School community, with tips, the latest on the podcasting community as well, and podcast recommendations. So we're very excited about this new bonus episode.
Yep. And also, if you remember, we are recording to a pre-recorded track. It's kind of a timer that keeps us going, an extra challenge for us. And so we wait until after the 13-minute segment and we hang out here on Twitter, or if you're listening on the podcast directories, you can come find us and watch us do this live on Twitter each week at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we'll hang out afterwards for Q&A or to respond to any comments that you might have during the PodBitz.
Yeah, so it's a lot of pressure, and you're going to see us and you're going to hear us raw and unedited and making a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
But it's fun. It's
Very
all fun. So this week, we'll be posting our second premium episode on our Patreon about email marketing for podcasters. And you can find this premium content at podsoundschool.com podsoundschool.com/support us.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you, you don't want to miss this series of premium episodes, because we are taking you from the early stages to all the different ways you can make money with your podcast.
Yep. And we already have one great episode in there all about monetizing. And then this week is going to be about email marketing, like Veronica
Email
mentioned.
marketing is very important.
And it's really important. That's really the beginning of starting to monetize and build your community. And so many podcasters overlook email marketing. So come by and join us there at our Overachievers Club. And we'll leave that link in this episode's description as well.
Yeah.
And tomorrow night on our Facebook group, we usually do a pod audit live most Thursdays, but this Thursday we're actually doing a Q&A. If you have any questions you'd like us to cover there, let us know. And by the way, speaking of pod audits, we have a couple spots left open for February. So if you'd like us to audit your podcast live in our Facebook group and give you a lot of really actionable tips and get some free coaching from us, reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at Pod Sound School and let us know, or reach out to us in our Facebook group, which is podsoundschool.com/community.
Yes. And this last weekend, we went to our first podcast festival, Outlier Podfest. This podcast festival was organized by Ever Gonzalez, Arielle Nissenblatt, and Spencer Wright. He's a local podcast producer with his company, The Pod Mill. And I just want to say thank you to them for organizing this event. It was really,
so cool.
really
and especially I have
informational.
to say that Arielle was so amazing with the way she pulled that event together. And there's so many cool people at this podcast event. So many awesome podcasters, and we'll be talking about that a lot more. And that's pretty good. What do you say we get into our first segment?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
This Week in Podcasting.
Okay, so this week in podcasting, it's been a really crazy week, especially for Podchaser. And if you aren't aware of what Podchaser is yet, or you haven't gone over to podchaser.com, make sure you go and do that. It's like the IMDb for podcasting. It's a really fun way to discover more podcasts and also to get a little more make your podcast a little more discoverable. But the first thing that happened with Podchaser this week is Spreaker announced that they will be integrating with Podchaser, which is really cool. So people who host their podcast with the Spreaker app will now be able to distribute their show directly to Podchaser from the Spreaker app, which is really fun. And then the other thing that happened in Podchaser was
Yeah, so Podchaser raises, and we just got this morning, that Podchaser raised $1.65 million in funding. And the company says that the new funding will help to support Podchaser's 3 core initiatives: the advanced research and discovery, industry-wide data standardization, and data-driven marketplaces for connections, including today's launch of its guest placement platform, Podchaser Connect.
Which is really cool. And we haven't checked that out yet, but we're going to.
We haven't.
It sounds awesome.
And this isn't the first time we see big money coming
and
into...
this was actually we found this from the Podcast Business Journal, and this article just came out today, so they just launched that. So go check that out today. It sounds like a way to get some guests or to be a guest on podcasts. Yep. And then another thing is Spotify news. Always, every week, there's tons of Spotify news. These Spotify, they're just going after it. They are going to be podcasting, right?
Yeah.
Well, in early 2019, Spotify purchased Gimlet for $230 million, if you remember that. And
Did you?
I didn't realize that. I didn't. But I would like to think that I knew that. But in early 2019, we were just babies.
We were babies.
Yeah. I mean, now we're kind of teenagers now. Yeah, we were in the podcasting womb. But Spotify launched Gimlet Academy, which seems really cool. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to. It's a new 5-part podcast series that teaches podcasters how to up their game. And it has expert lessons on pitching, booking, interviewing, and editing. And the host is Alex Bloomberg, who is none other than the co-founder of Gimlet. And it looks really cool. So get some free podcast coaching and check that out. It's called the Gimlet Academy. And, okay.
Isn't he your professional crush?
I don't know if he's necessarily my professional crush, but I do have... He's not my whole professional crush, Alex Bloomberg, but he's up there.
I'm going to be listening to this podcast. I'm very interested in storytelling. Gimlet Media has one of my favorite podcasts. So
yeah, it's really cool. And so we sort of breezed through the news that we had planned for this week, but yeah, we're definitely going to be listening to that.
So check out to all of this news. We're going to include the links to these articles on our episode
description. And I actually did want to let you guys know that we have a lot of new listeners in New Mexico.
We do.
And we'd really like to get to know our listeners in New Mexico. So if you are in New Mexico and you're listening to this right now, please reach out to us and say hi to us on social, and we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
Let's get to This Week in Your Queue.
This Week in Your Queue.
So this week in my queue, I've got an awesome podcast for you. She was also at the Outlier Podfest, and her name is Rachel Knoll. And I think Noel might be how you pronounce her last name, but her podcast is called Poems for People. So go check out Poems for People. It's a really great podcast all about the intimacy of human connection, really is what I would say it's about. And she has these amazing way of interviewing really interesting people. But then the other thing that sets her podcast apart from just a standard interview podcast is at the very end, using a typewriter, she writes a poem for the person that she's interviewing and in real time, and then gives that poem to them and they read the poem. And it's just really cool. It's kind of a different way of looking and thinking about poetry.
So my podcast recommendation for this week is podcast Pontifications with Evo Terra. We met Evo over Outlier Podcast Fest this weekend, and Evo has so much wisdom about podcasting. He's been podcasting since the beginning of podcasts. This show is a short form show that takes an advancing view of podcasting with daily strategic insights to help you develop a critical thinking about the podcast industry so you can succeed. He's all about raising the bar of podcasting, and
yes.
I love it.
And he was also at the Outlier Podfest. We got had the pleasure of meeting him. He's just as amazing as he is on his podcast in real person. Just a wonderful character
thank you,
of
Evo.
podcasting. So
We
check
love
out
your
Evo's
podcast.
podcast for sure.
Tip of the week.
Wait till I tell you everything.
So the tip of the week is all about stop motion.
Yes.
And specifically, we're going to talk about this awesome app, brand new app called Life Lapse.
So stop motion videos can be used in any social media platform or really anywhere, your website or anywhere you want to use these videos. A stop motion video is a series of pictures with small movements that when played quickly looks like a video. Stop motion videos are very popular right now on Instagram, and it's because how we are in the quest for getting people's attention and getting people to look at our content. So when you are scrolling your different social media feeds, and you find a series of static pictures and images, then you come across this stop motion video, and you just linger. You stay there and you get more curious about. So it helps with getting people's attentions.
Yes.
We experimented with this app yesterday. It's called Life Lapse stop motion app. And we made a video for one of our clients, and we had the time of our lives.
It was so fun.
We posted that video on my Facebook
it's really
this
great.
morning.
And there's a lot of creative ways you can think of using stop motion for your podcast. Now, this app is $30 or $40 for the year.
$39.99 for the year.
But it has a free trial. I'm pretty sure if you try it out, you're going to wind up loving the app. But just think of all the different ways
Or
you can
$7.99 a
integrate,
month.
like the a podcast player sliding in, or you and your co-host, all the different creative ways you can utilize stop motion to catch more eyes on Twitter. Even TikTok would be great for stop motion. All over the place, right? So start thinking about stop motion videos in your podcast marketing. And there you go, guys.
Ooh.
Another episode of PodBitz down.
This was a hard one for me.
So,
we just released our episode with Taylor Timon all about intellectual property. We released it on Monday. We were a few days late because we were on the Outlier Podfest this weekend. You can access that episode on our podcast wherever you listen to the Pod Sounds Cool podcast.
Yes, and all the links are included in the description of this episode.
Remember to follow us on Instagram or Twitter at Pod Sounds Cool, and join our Facebook community, podsoundscool.com/community.
Yes, and finally, if you want to give us some love, give us a rating at ratethispodcast.com/podsoundschool.
Yes.
All right, guys. Happy casting.
Happy casting.
Sometimes all a school needs is a little facelifting. Laboratories functionally designed for the student's use. The new miracle of modern tools for instruction.